There are criminal forces that do not merely exist in the shadows but operate like perfect machines, controlling the underground economy and even influencing the politics of multiple nations. The American Mafia, also known as Cosa Nostra, once ruled the United States with iron discipline, maintaining an organizational structure so tight that even the authorities had to tread carefully. Meanwhile, the Chinese Triads have extended their tentacles worldwide, establishing a transnational criminal network spanning from drug trafficking and smuggling to controlling black markets that no one else dares to touch. On one side stands an empire of power bound by strict codes of honor. On the other, a flexible network ready to adapt to any era. But when placed on the scale, which organization is truly stronger? A system with absolute discipline or a force with no boundaries? Is brutality the ultimate measure of strength? And if you had to choose one organization to rule the underworld, which would it be? Let's dive into the hidden corners of these two organizations to find the answer. Every powerful empire is built on a foundation of orderly authority. Whether in politics, economics, or the underworld, the American Mafia, also known as Cosa Nostra, and the Chinese Triads are no exception. One operates as a pyramid-like machine with strict rules, while the other functions as a flexible network stretching across the globe. But which operational model is more effective? Does iron discipline ensure lasting strength? Or is adaptability the key to an organization's survival over time? To answer this, we must start from the origins of these two forces. The American Mafia was not born in America. Cosa Nostra actually originates from the island of Sicily, Italy. In the late 19th century, Sicily was an impoverished land where local crime bosses, called capos, controlled every aspect of life. When Italians immigrated to America in the early 20th century, they brought this power system with them and gradually built a new criminal empire. However, it was the Prohibition era, 1920 to 1933, in the US that marked the turning point for the Mafia's expansion. When the government banned alcohol, Mafia gangs immediately took control of the illegal liquor trade, making millions of dollars each year. This was the golden age of the Mafia, and to maintain its power, it established a tightly organized system, operating almost like a secret military. The organizational structure of the American Mafia follows a pyramid model. At the top is the boss, the ultimate authority who makes all key decisions. Below him is the underboss, the right-hand man who oversees daily operations and can replace the boss if necessary. But what sets the American Mafia apart is the position of consigliere, the advisor, who stays out of internal conflicts but plays a strategic role in ensuring decisions do not disrupt the organization. Below them are the capos, who command smaller groups, each managing a sector such as gambling, loan sharking, or smuggling. At the bottom are the soldiers, enforcers who do whatever is necessary to protect the organization. Not everyone can rise to a high position within the Mafia. To become a made man, an official member, one must have Italian heritage and commit at least one sanctioned murder. Once inside, the omerta, the code of silence, is absolute and unbreakable. No member is allowed to speak about the organization, even under arrest. Violation of this rule results in only one consequence: death. What about the Chinese Triads? While the American Mafia operates under a pyramid structure, the Triads function as a flexible network. There is no single supreme boss overseeing the entire organization. Instead, it is divided into independent gangs, each led by a dragonhead, who manages operations and maintains connections with other groups. Although independent, these gangs still follow a hierarchical system with ranks such as Red Pole, White Paper Fan, and Black Paper Fan, representing different levels of authority. The Triads have a longer history than the American Mafia. Their origins date back to the 17th century when a group of martial artists and soldiers formed the organization to resist the Qing dynasty. However, over time, this nationalist movement transformed into China's largest criminal syndicate, controlling illicit activities ranging from drug trafficking and human smuggling to gambling and contract killings. What sets the Triads apart from the American Mafia is their deep-rooted connections with Chinese communities worldwide. Through waves of migration, Triad gangs expanded their reach to the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and even Africa. The organizational structure of the triads provides a clear advantage, flexibility and resilience against crackdowns. If authorities dismantle one group, the others can continue operating unaffected. This makes the triads a decentralized network, like a multi-headed serpent, where cutting off one head does not kill the rest. However, flexibility comes with drawbacks. Unlike the American Mafia, where all members must adhere to the omerta, the triads are prone to internal conflicts. Without a central leader, rival factions may compete for territory, leading to violent street wars. The American Mafia has strict rules about killing. Murders must be authorized and only carried out when necessary. In contrast, the triads often engage in public assassinations to send a message, turning entire districts into battlegrounds. This raises an intriguing question. Between these two systems, which is more effective? The American Mafia benefits from discipline, but this also makes it vulnerable. If a key figure is arrested, the entire organization can crumble. A prime example is the 1980s when the US government used the RICO Act to prosecute numerous mafia bosses, significantly weakening the organization. Meanwhile, the triads, with their flexible structure, can survive even if one faction is dismantled. However, they also face the risk of internal divisions and loss of centralized control. This leads to another question. Does a criminal organization need a centralized power structure to maintain its strength? Or is adaptability the key to survival? History shows that while the American Mafia once dominated the US, it has significantly declined, whereas the triads continue to expand and thrive. Could it be that flexibility has allowed the triads to evolve with modern times while the rigid rules of the mafia have left it behind? The story is far from over. If one organization has a stable structure but limited reach, while another has an extensive network but is prone to infighting, which is truly stronger? To answer this, we need to delve deeper into their scale and global influence, something that will be explored in the next section. Stay tuned, because the upcoming revelations may change everything you thought you knew about the underworld. Every criminal empire has a limit, or at least, that is what people think. But the American Mafia and the Chinese Triads have proven otherwise. One organization once ruled the United States like a shadow monarchy, while the other expanded beyond borders, infiltrating every corner of the underworld. If the power of an organization is only valid within a certain geographical range, then which one is truly stronger? An empire with absolute dominance over its territory, or a force that spreads across continents? Impossible to eradicate completely? Cosa Nostra is not a global organization, at least, not when compared to the scale of the triads. They controlled the United States, but that was also their greatest limitation. From the 1930s to the 1980s, the American Mafia dominated the underground economy in the country. New York, Chicago, Las Vegas, three major cities were under their influence. However, despite their ties to the Sicilian Mafia in Italy, Cosa Nostra never expanded beyond the US borders. This was not due to a lack of power, but rather because their organizational system was not suited for global expansion. In the US, Cosa Nostra once controlled nearly all illicit industries. They operated Las Vegas casinos for 3 decades, controlled the labor market in construction, transportation, and even the waste management industry. But their focus on America made them an easy target for the government. The introduction of the RICO Act in the 1970s dealt a devastating blow to the mafia, as numerous bosses were arrested and crime families gradually lost their power. As a result, compared to its golden years, the American Mafia today has significantly weakened. In stark contrast, the triads have built a criminal empire with no clear boundaries. They do not only operate in China or Hong Kong but have expanded into Southeast Asia, Europe, North America, and even Africa. If the American Mafia is a monarchy, then the triads are a network. They exist in places where even the police struggle to maintain control. Triad gangs operate independently but remain connected through shared rules and mutual interests. This makes them nearly untouchable. Take a look at major seaports in China and Southeast Asia. These places are not just hubs for legal trade but also transit points for drugs, counterfeit goods, weapons, and human trafficking, all under the triads' control. Unlike the American Mafia, whose underground businesses revolve mainly around the US, the Triads can shift their markets flexibly. If one country tightens its laws, they simply move operations elsewhere. If one gang is dismantled, others continue to function. One of the Triads' greatest strengths is their connections with other criminal organizations. They maintain relationships with the Japanese Yakuza, Mexican cartels, Russian mafia, and even terrorist groups. Through these alliances, the Triads gain access to drug supplies, weapons, and even financial resources from organizations that governments find difficult to target. Meanwhile, the American Mafia has mostly operated independently, rarely collaborating with groups outside the Italian community. However, the American Mafia still holds one advantage. Although they do not have a global reach, once they control a region, their dominance is absolute. When Cosa Nostra ruled New York, no one could challenge them. When they ran Las Vegas, no other organization could interfere with their cash flow. The Triads, despite their widespread presence, are more vulnerable to internal divisions. Their independent gangs can betray one another, and without a strong central leader, they risk weakening from within. So the question remains, is an organization with a vast reach but lacking total control stronger than one that dominates its territory but has a limited scope? This is not just a geographical issue, it is a strategic one. A flexible network like the Triads can easily adapt but is also prone to fragmentation. A tightly structured organization like the American Mafia can exert absolute control over a region but is more susceptible to collapse when targeted by authorities. This story does not end here. The strength of an organization is not just about its reach but also the industries it controls. An organization may expand across the globe, but if it does not dominate the most lucrative businesses, it cannot survive in the long run. In the next section, we will delve into the primary operations of both organizations, where dirty money is laundered, where illegal industries function like a hidden economy, and you will see that there are certain businesses so powerful that even the most notorious criminal organizations fear them. Every criminal organization exists for money, but how they make money is what sets the underworld apart. Cosa Nostra and the Triads are not just senseless killing gangs, they are sophisticated money-making machines. Operating like multinational corporations, if the American Mafia controls legitimate industries to launder money, the Triads have built a global smuggling network that spans drugs, weapons, and human trafficking. The question is, which method is more effective? A system that relies on legal businesses to maintain power, or a smuggling network without borders, where profits can come from anything? The American Mafia was once the undisputed ruler of the gambling industry in the US before Las Vegas became the luxurious city it is today. It was nothing more than a barren desert. It was the Mafia that transformed it into a gambling paradise, with crime bosses like Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky backing the biggest casinos. But beyond legal casinos, the Mafia also ran hundreds of illegal betting rings across the country. If someone wanted to place a bet on a baseball or boxing match, they had to go through the Mafia, and if they tried to cheat or refused to pay, they would disappear. But gambling was only a part of this underground empire. The American Mafia also dominated loan sharking, where debtors had no right to refuse. When someone borrowed money from the Mafia, they were not just subjected to exorbitant interest rates, they had to abide by one rule: never be late on payments. If they missed a deadline, they would receive a gentle warning, such as a punch to the face or a threat against their family. But if they continued to default, the consequences were far worse. Many debtors ended up with broken legs, missing fingers, or simply vanished, serving as a warning to others. Additionally, the American Mafia had a unique way of making money, controlling legitimate industries. By infiltrating labor unions, they could manipulate contracts in construction, transportation, and even waste management. If a construction company wanted to win a big contract, they had to pay a protection fee to the Mafia. If they refused, their workers would suffer accidents, materials would go missing, or projects would mysteriously be sabotaged. This is why the Mafia was able to survive for so long. They didn't just operate in the shadows, they embedded themselves in the mainstream economy, making it nearly impossible for the government to eradicate them completely. But while the American Mafia controlled the economy by infiltrating legitimate businesses, the Triads took a different approach. They didn't just launder money through businesses, they turned dirty money into a massive industry. No organization in the world compares to the Triads when it comes to smuggling. From drugs and weapons to counterfeit goods and human trafficking, they are present in every market that generates profit. One of the biggest revenue streams for the Triads is drugs. While the Mexican cartels dominate the cocaine trade, the Triads control the synthetic drug market, particularly methamphetamine and fentanyl. In recent years, fentanyl, a drug 50 times stronger than heroin, has flooded the US, killing tens of thousands of people annually. And the primary source of this drug? China. With the Triads orchestrating production and distribution, they run underground labs, manufacturing fentanyl in massive quantities, then exporting it to the US and Europe through maritime routes. Just a few grams of fentanyl can kill hundreds of people. But for the Triads, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Beyond drugs, the Triads are also kingpins of human trafficking. They operate smuggling routes that transport illegal immigrants from China to the US, Canada, Australia, and Europe. These individuals are often forced into working in massage parlors, restaurants, or illegal sweatshops. If they attempt to escape or report to authorities, they are beaten, tortured, or simply disappear. This is not just a lucrative business but also a means for the Triads to maintain control over Chinese communities abroad. Another industry dominated by the Triads is counterfeiting. From Louis Vuitton bags and Rolex watches to pharmaceuticals and electronic components, anything can be faked. And the Triads are the masterminds behind these operations. Factories in China churn out millions of counterfeit products each year, generating enormous profits without facing regulatory oversight. Governments worldwide have attempted to crack down on counterfeiting, but whenever one operation is shut down, another immediately takes its place. So between these two models, who is the better moneymaker? The American Mafia may control legitimate industries, but as US law enforcement tightened regulations, they gradually lost their revenue streams. The Triads, on the other hand, do not depend on any single system. If one market is restricted, they simply shift to another. They can profit from anything, as long as there is demand. This is what makes them one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world today. But another important question arises. Does the way they make money affect how they maintain power? An organization that earns money through legal industries tends to enforce strict control to avoid attracting attention. Meanwhile, an organization that profits from smuggling is more willing to use open violence to protect its interests. This leads to a bigger issue. How do these two organizations compare in terms of brutality? If the American Mafia kills in the shadows, are the Triads willing to wage open war to maintain their power? And does being more brutal necessarily mean being stronger? The answer will be revealed in the next section. In the underworld, there is no mercy, only power. And to maintain power, deterrence is essential. The American Mafia and the Triads have their own ways of punishing traitors, protecting their territories, and asserting dominance. But the key difference between these two organizations lies in how they use violence. One enforces silent, internal discipline, while the other does not hesitate to show the world how powerful they are. If power must be upheld through fear, then which method of control is more effective? The American Mafia has long cultivated an image of discipline and secrecy. Their most important rule is omerta, the absolute code of silence. A member who joins the organization is not only sworn to loyalty but also commits to never revealing anything about the family, no matter the circumstances, even under arrest or torture. Those who break this rule face severe punishment. And in most cases, that means being quietly eliminated. The Mafia does not like drawing attention. When they need to remove someone, it is done swiftly, discreetly, and without leaving traces. For the Mafia, control means ensuring that no one knows what happened, but that everyone understands betrayal has a price. Punishment within the Mafia is highly organized. A member suspected of treason is often summoned to a meeting, sometimes disguised as an ordinary discussion. Only upon arrival do they realize their fate has already been sealed. The execution is carried out quickly, without mercy. This ensures that once someone joins the Mafia, they understand there is no way out. However, The most crucial aspect of the American Mafia's strategy is that they always strive to conceal their actions from the public, minimizing unwanted attention from law enforcement. In stark contrast, the Triads take a more direct approach. They do not hesitate to display their power openly. For the Triads, deterrence is not just about punishing an individual traitor. It is about sending a message to the entire community. Anyone who defies them will face consequences. This is why many Triad gangs handle betrayals with extreme brutality, making a spectacle of their strength to ensure no one dares to challenge them. This method reinforces fear within their ranks and helps maintain tight control over the territories they operate in. However, this public approach has its downsides. Unlike the Mafia, which carefully hides its actions, the Triads' overt violence makes them easier targets for law enforcement. Over the years, governments around the world have launched numerous crackdowns on Triad gangs precisely because their activities are too visible. This means that while their intimidation tactics may help them maintain power in the short term, in the long run, they also create greater risks for the organization. So which method of control is more effective? Should an organization maintain fear by operating in the shadows, ensuring that no one ever knows what happens? Or should it assert dominance openly, making sure no one dares to challenge it? One side sees secrecy as an advantage, while the other uses its presence to reinforce power. But this raises an even bigger question. Can control based on fear last forever? The stronger an organization becomes, the more it risks becoming a target for destruction. And without deterrence, can any criminal organization survive for long? This question remains unanswered, and only time will tell. Whether it is the American Mafia with its rigid discipline or the Triads with their limitless reach, both organizations have left an undeniable mark on the history of the underworld. But the question remains, which is the most powerful criminal organization? A regime of absolute power but confined to a specific territory? Or a multinational network that cannot be completely eradicated? Share your thoughts, because the answer is not as simple as it seems. If you enjoyed deep analyses of the criminal underworld, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on upcoming content.